We live in interesting times.
On tonight's headlines.
Malacanang confirms that President Duterte will soon order the temporary suspension of the second tranche of excise tax on fuel.
Violent storms hit Portugal, leaving hundreds of thousands of people without power before carrying heavy rain into Spain.
Sears, the chain that once dominated the U.S. retail sector, files for bankruptcy and announces it's closing almost 150 stores.
Forget Brexit. Prince Harry and his wife Meghan announced they are expecting a baby.
Amama Angeles, wherever you're watching from around the world, thank you very much for joining us.
We welcome our viewers here in the Philippines and around the world. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sam Cepeda.
And now to the news. Malacanang confirmed that President Duterte will soon order the temporary suspension of the second tranche of excise tax on fuel, but has yet to decide whether it will heed a senator's suggestion to suspend it now or sooner. Take a look.
So there's going to be a decision and the excise tax.
Definitely there is a decision. In fact, it was even the president who made that announcement.
Okay, RJ?
Definitely there is
For
a
next
decision.
year.
In fact, it was even the president who made that announcement. There will be a paper documenting that.
Kasi as of now-
Yes, the fact that they made an announcement for that is a validation.
Panelo made this remark after the Department of Finance on Sunday said that current price and multiple estimates of crude prices over the next 2 months show that the average price will stay above the $80 per barrel threshold. Under the tax reform for acceleration and inclusion or train law, suspension of excise tax levied on petroleum products may be suspended in 2019 if global crude prices average $80 per barrel for 3 consecutive months. Panelo said whether oil prices in the world market reaches $80 per barrel or not, the government was still set on pushing through with the suspension.
Modern jeepneys and electric tricycles will be launched on Boracay Island once it reopens later this month, the Department of Transportation said Monday. In a statement, the DOTR said 4 modern jeepneys will be offering free rides starting October 26 until December 2018. These vehicles will preserve the beautiful environment of Boracay, DOTR Secretary Arthur Tugadi said during the unveiling of the modern jeepneys held in Boracay. The modernized public utility vehicles that would be provided by ride-sharing firm Grab Philippines are equipped with Wi-Fi, CCTVs, GPS, and an automated fare collection system. Meanwhile, around 200 electric tricycles will also be deployed in Boracay as the DOTR has signed a memorandum of agreement with the Department of Interior and Local Government and the Department of Energy. Residents will get discounts on the Jeeps and e-trikes rides, including children 12 years old and below, while senior citizens and persons with disabilities will be able to avail free rides.
In Malaysia, Anwar Ibrahim won an overwhelming mandate in a parliamentary by-election, setting the stage for his return to frontline Malaysian politics and sealing the once jailed opposition figure's remarkable resurrection. Take a look. Winning the seat was a key requirement for Anwar to succeed 93-year-old Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad, who jailed his former protege and heir apparent on sodomy and corruption charges in 1998 when their relationship soured. Mahathir returned to the premiership this year after a shock election win, saying he would stay in power for only 2 years before handing the reins to Anwar. Figures from the Election Commission showed Anwar got more than 71% of the total votes cast in a 7-way contest, which included a former aide who lodged the sodomy charges that landed Anwar in prison for a second time in 2014.
I am, of course, extremely pleased and humbled by the results, more convincing than what was observed in the last general elections. This, to my mind, is an important milestone and vote of confidence to the Pakatan Harapan government. I will then, of course, focus my work assisting our leaders and the parliament to ensure that we embark on effective parliamentary reforms.
Turkey will search the Saudi consulate in Istanbul later Monday as part of an investigation into the disappearance of prominent journalist Jamal Khashoggi, a Turkish diplomatic source said. Khashoggi, a Washington Post contributor and Saudi citizen residing in the United States, vanished on October 2 after visiting the building to obtain official documents. The two countries are sharply at odds over what happened to Khashoggi, who has been critical of some policies of Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and Riyadh's intervention in the war in Yemen. While Riyadh insists Khashoggi left the consulate after his visit, Turkish police said he did not leave the building. Turkish government sources said police believed Khashoggi, a former Saudi government advisor, may have been killed by a 15-man team sent specially to Istanbul. Last week, Turkey accepted a Saudi proposal to form a joint working group to investigate Mr. Khashoggi's disappearance. The latest moves come as more leading business figures say they will not attend a major investment conference in Riyadh later this month. The head of J.P. Morgan, Jamie Dimon, is one of the latest high-profile executives to pull out.
Four days after Hurricane Michael wiped out Mexico Beach in Florida, rescue teams with sniffer dogs are now searching for possible victims buried under the rubble in the debris-strewn community. Take a look.
This location was completely devastated by Hurricane Michael, so we want to make sure that we identify any individuals that could potentially stayed in place or sheltered in place during the storm. Try to make contact. If they're injured, get them to the proper medical attention or evacuate them to a place of safer location. Every day we are either evacuating or assisting residents or identifying any deceased, marking it so that they know who those individuals might be. As of today, we made contact with 20 people that we were able to assist. We evacuated a family of 4 to a safer location.
The mammoth storm, which made landfall as a Category 4 storm on Wednesday, claimed lives in 4 states, but Florida suffered the worst damage by far. Large parts of the state's panhandle were pulverized by the strong winds and rain, and 8 storm-related deaths have been reported in Florida so far. 17 now at the update. Rescue teams with sniffer dogs are now searching for possible victims buried under the rubble. U.S. media have reported 1 death in the town. The body of an elderly man was found hundreds of yards from his home.
And when you come here and you see the devastation, it's just heart-wrenching. It's taken a toll on my officers. It's a small community. We know everybody by name. And we're walking around the rubble debris and you're seeing personal effects, and it's overwhelming. We were here 60 miles before the storm hit, and there were still people in town that would not leave. We went door to door to every single house in the city, and initially there was too many that did not want to leave, to include children. We came back around, we made a second attempt, but still some choose to stay.
In Arizona, the remnants of Hurricane Sergio brought showers throughout the Valley of Arizona. The report from Lisa Docena.
As predicted by the National Hurricane Center, the remnants of Tropical Storm Sergio brought heavy rains and flooding to Phoenix and the surrounding areas. The National Weather Service tweeted that by Saturday evening, rain totals had put October down as the 4th wettest month ever, the wettest October ever, as well as the wettest water year to date. Since the water year starts October 1st, and current rain totals are usually achieved around May of the following year, it goes without saying that Arizonians should be happy to receive the much-needed drought relief. But with the onset of flash flooding, it may take a while for the feeling of relief to take hold. For Eagle News Live, I'm Lisa Docena, 1 with 25.
Thank you, Lisa. At least 6 people died after heavy storms swamped parts of southwestern France, flooding rivers and cutting roads, according to officials. Take a look. The audit department, which includes the fortress city of Carcassonne, was particularly badly hit. One woman was swept to her death by rising waters in the village of Villardonnel, and at least 4 died overnight in Ville-Galenche, according to local authorities. A 6th person also died in the department. Authorities added, without providing details, the Aude River reached flood levels not seen in over 100 years, according to the French agency responsible for monitoring water levels. One person was also injured when a house collapsed in Cusack, according to local official Alain Thirion. Firemen responded to more than 250 calls overnight as 160 to 180 millimeters or 6 to 7 inches of rain fell in Carcassonne. In the villages north of Carcassonne, all roads were cut, schools closed, and people were asked to stay at home. In Conquest, there was up to 6 feet of water in the streets. 6 other departments were also hit by the storms, from the eastern Pyrénées to Aveyron, further north.
Meanwhile, the Orbe River in the city of La Grasse, in one of the several in southwestern France, is to burst its banks after heavy storms swamped parts of the Aude region, cutting roads and claiming 6 lives. Residents of the worst-hit areas have been urged to stay inside their homes by emergency services and local authorities, who have issued a red alert. The floods are the worst the Aude River has seen in more than 100 years, according to the Weather Monitoring Service, Vigicru. In Trebet, floodwater is as high as 7 meters, or that's 23 feet, according to local authorities. Violent storms hit Portugal early on Sunday, leaving hundreds of thousands of people without power before carrying heavy rain on into Spain, authorities said. Leslie, which was a Category 1 hurricane but weakened to a post-tropical storm as it made landfall late Saturday, left 28 people with minor injuries, Civil Defense Commander Luis Belo Costa told reporters. The region around the capital, Lisbon, and center of the country at Coimbra and Leiria were worst hit, with trees uprooted, cars and houses damaged, and local flooding reported. Aveiro, Viseu, and Porto in the north also suffered damage, with rescue services reporting a total of 2,500 incidents. The Civil Defense Services said 324,000 people were left without electricity, while more than 60 people had to leave their damaged homes and flee to safety. Only 5 hurricanes have ever arrived in this region of the Atlantic Ocean, and it had been feared Leslie could turn out to be the most powerful storm to hit Portugal since 1842. Over the past 176 years, only Hurricane Vince has made landfall on the Iberian Peninsula, hitting southern Spain in 2005, according to weather records. In October 2017, strong winds from passing Hurricane Ophelia fed forest fires that killed around 40 people during a heat wave. Ophelia then made landfall in Ireland as a violent storm, killing 3 people. On Tuesday, intense rain sparked flash floods in the Spanish holiday island of Mallorca, killing 12 people.
The economic cost of climate-related disasters hit $2.25 trillion over the last 2 decades, an increase of more than 150% compared to the previous 20 years, according to the United Nations. The United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction noted that climate change is increasing the frequency and severity of extreme weather events such as floods and storms. Now, between 1978 and 1997, total losses for climate-related disasters was $895 billion, UNISDR said in a report based on data compiled by the Center for Research on the Epidemiology of Disasters at the Université Catholique de Leuven in Belgium. But between 1998 and 2017, that figure hit $2.25 trillion, according to the report, listing the United States, China, Japan, and India as the countries where the financial toll has been highest.
We have seen already that there is a very sharp increase in the number of climate-related events, which are actually creating 77% of the total direct economic losses caused by disasters. So the fact that climate change is having a big influence and impact in the increase of direct economic losses due to disasters. The report also emphasizes on the fact that the poorest of the poor are the most affected. And this happens even in developed nations.
The UNISDR counted the number of climate-related disasters between 1998 to 2017 at more than 6,600, with storms and floods the most common events. The report notes gaps in data collection, but says the findings clearly show investing in disaster risk reduction must become a central part of policy making in response to climate change.
Hispanic Day, or Día de la Hispanidad, or National Day, Fiesta Nacional de España, is an annual national public holiday in Spain on October 12. It commemorates when Christopher Columbus first set foot in the Americas in 1492. Coinciding with the event, tens of thousands of Catalans in favor of the unity of Spain went to the center of Barcelona. Our correspondent in Barcelona, Lynn Tumbaga Diaz, reports.
Viva España! Hundreds of citizens in Barcelona, Spain celebrated the Spain's national holiday, or also called Día de Hispanidad. Different Spanish groups celebrated it with numerous demonstrations in major streets in Barcelona. Most of the major roads were closed to give way to the demonstrations. Most of the people who participated in the demonstrations carried flags of Spain and Catalonia. They expressed their support in Spain being united with Catalonia. Somos muchos catalanes, que no debemos separarnos de España. Catalunya es España. We are Catalans, and we should not be separated from Spain. Catalunya is Spain. Part of the demonstrations were dances performed by different groups. From Barcelona, Spain, I am Lynn Tumbaga Diaz, and I am one with 25.
Thank you, Lynn. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump has denied speculation that he's increasingly at odds with Defense Secretary James Mattis. But he also didn't rule out the possibility of Mattis' departure from his administration. In an interview to be aired on Sunday, or was aired on Sunday on CBS's 60 Minutes, President Trump was asked whether he wanted Mattis to leave.
I have a very good relationship with him. I had lunch with him 2 days ago. I have a very good relationship with him. It could be that he is. I think he's sort of a Democrat, if you want to know the truth. But General Mattis is a good guy. We get along very well. He may leave. I mean, at some point, everybody leaves. Everybody. People leave. That's Washington.
Now, President Trump's comments come as he eyes another cabinet shakeup. Last week, his ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, announced her resignation effective at the end of the year. Now, she gave no reason for the surprise move, but observers have noted that the ascension of John Bolton as National Security Advisor and Mike Pompeo as Secretary of State have shifted the power dynamics on Trump's national security team.
And yet we keep hearing that the White House is in chaos.
It's wrong. It's so false. It's fake news. Now, out of hundreds and hundreds of people, some I could have not picked, I'm changing things around, and I'm entitled to. I have people now on standby that will be phenomenal. They'll come into the administration. They'll be phenomenal. I told you the story. I told you the story. We have I think I have a great cabinet. There are some people that I'm not happy with. I have some people that I'm not thrilled with, and I have other people that I'm beyond thrilled with.
U.S. President Donald Trump has visited Minnesota twice in less than 6 months. Political strategists are parachuting in from Washington. The writing is on the wall. This is a critical election battleground state. Watch this.
I need your vote. I need your support to stop radical Democrats and to
Donald Trump is in Minnesota for the second time in just a few weeks. He's trying to convince voters like Bill Sorg to vote Republican in the midterm elections. Sorg's 4,000-acre farm produces mainly dairy products, corn, and soybeans. He says Trump's trade war with China has forced him and other farmers to sell their products at below-cost prices, gravely damaging the area's economy.
Things have not gotten better, they've gotten worse. I want to vote for people that want the rural economy to prosper.
Democrats are betting on picking up at least 2 congressional districts in the state, but are also fearful of losing 2 of their traditional strongholds. Angie Craig is vying for a seat in the U.S. House against incumbent Jason Lewis, focusing her campaign largely on health care and economic stability.
Healthcare is one of the biggest issues we have in the district, and it's not just about the cost of health insurance, it's really about the cost of healthcare. Premiums keep going up, deductibles keep going up, and it's a particular issue actually in our farm communities throughout the 2nd Congressional District.
Both parties are fighting hard for the votes of suburban women, whose views of the Trump administration could heavily impact their decisions in November.
I've seen a positive impact, so while I'm not always happy with the way he says things, I am happy with the outcome, and I'm happy with the things that we're doing moving forward for our country, making it a better place.
It's more of a moral, ethical kind of thing. I just don't think that he's a good role model when it comes to morals and ethics, not because he's a Republican, but because of who he is.
Minnesota has been considered a blue state for the past several decades and hasn't voted for a Republican president since Richard Nixon's election in 1972. But it came close in 2016 when Trump lost to Clinton here by a mere 2 percentage points.
This state will be one of the key swing states for the 2020 presidential election. It's quite likely whoever carries the state of Minnesota will be the next president of the United States.
And since many see these congressional elections as an indicator for 2020, even more is riding on the fate of Minnesota come November 6th.
Your vote. I need your support to stop.
Now forget Brexit. Prince Harry and his wife Meghan announced they were expecting their first baby, sparking a media frenzy, debates over the royal name, and expressions of delight from the Queen. Kensington Palace said Queen Elizabeth, its 34-year-old grandson and the 37-year-old U.S. actress, who had just arrived in Sydney ahead of a 16-day tour of the Pacific, would be having a child in the spring. The Queen was said to be, quote, delighted. Prime Minister Theresa May tweeted her warmest congratulations, and Meghan's mother, Doria Ragland, said she was very happy about this lovely news. The big announcement came with the nation gloomily pondering the prospects of Britain crashing out of the European Union without an agreement after Brexit negotiations hit a weekend roadblock. TV stations broke away from their Brexit coverage, banner headlines appeared on newspaper websites, and debates began about possible name for the future seventh in line to the British throne.
Prince Harry and Meghan touched down in Sydney on Monday, kicking off a bumper Pacific tour that is the British royals' first major outing abroad as a couple. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex arrived in a wet and wintry Australia after a weekend spent celebrating their the marriage of their relative Princess Eugenie to a wine merchant. The more than 2-week official visit will take in multiple stops in Australia, Fiji, Tonga, and New Zealand, all parts of the Commonwealth of the states formerly colonized by Britain. The whole visit will be keenly watched by the British media. Meghan, a photogenic U.S. actress, married the grandson of Queen Elizabeth II in May, becoming the new royal of media obsession in Britain and beyond. A 37-year-old made waves recently by closing her own car door.
Michael, why are you asking me?
Well,
you're all over this.
Chinos?
No, he was wearing a sweater.
More news will be coming your way when Eagle News International returns.
Stay with us. We'll be back. Sears, the venerable chain that once dominated the American retail sector but had been in decline since the advent of the Amazon era, filed for bankruptcy and announced it was closing almost 150 stores. With a history that stretches back to 1886, the company was a pioneer of departmental stores that sold all things to all people, and by the mid-20th century had built a vast empire that stretched across North America. But it had closed hundreds of outlets in recent years amid a retail shakeout caused in part by the rise of Amazon and other e-commerce players. Sears had been drowning in debt and reportedly could not afford a $134 million repayment that had been due on Monday. Edward S. Lampert, chairman of Sears Holdings, said the insolvency filing would give the company the, quote, flexibility to strengthen its balance sheet and enable it to accelerate a strategic transformation. The company also said it intended to reorganize around a smaller store platform, a strategy it said helped save tens of thousands of jobs. Sears added it had received commitments for $300 million in debtor-in-possession financing and was negotiating for an additional $300 million. In March, iconic Toys R Us announced it was shutting all of its U.S. outlets, while other big names such as Macy's and JCPenney have also been forced to close numerous locations and lay off workers.
Brexit negotiations have hit a real problem over the issue of the Irish border, government sources have warned. Ahead of a key summit, the EU is believed to be seeking further reassurances to prevent a so-called hard border involving physical checks. Brexit negotiator Michael Barnier warns Britain will have to accept limited new administrative controls on trade with Northern Ireland in any negotiated Brexit deal.
Both the EU and the UK exclude having a physical border on the island of Ireland. Therefore, what will arrive into Northern Ireland will also be arriving in our single market. There will be administrative procedures that do not exist today for goods traveling to Northern Ireland from the rest of the UK.
Prime Minister Theresa May has insisted that she will not agree to any Brexit that would encroach on British sovereignty, and her Northern Irish allies in Parliament have rejected such procedures. She has insisted any backstop arrangement should apply to the UK as a whole to avoid creating a new border in the Irish Sea. The UK is leaving the EU in March 2019, along with its single market and customs union, which allow for friction-free trade between members. After Brexit, it will have a land border with the EU between Northern Ireland and the Republic. Both the UK and the EU want to avoid a hard border, physical checks for infrastructure between Northern Ireland and Ireland, but cannot agree how.
Meanwhile, with just months to go until the UK leaves the European Union and a key summit on October 17th, huge uncertainty remains about Britain's future trading relationship with its closest neighbors. And at ports around the UK, local residents and businesses are preparing as best as they can with concern for the future mixed with hope for new opportunities. Take a look.
Is arriving from France at Newhaven on England's south coast, and already June Bradbury is making breakfast for her guests, a German family visiting from the continent. June started renting out her spare room on Airbnb in 2016 in response to Britain's vote to leave the EU.
It turned into this wonderful kind of open door to Europe again, and it felt very much like an antidote, and that's how I used it. I used to say to people, you know, this is my antidote to Brexit.
In coastal cities around the UK, residents and businesses are wondering what Brexit will mean for their links with Europe. Holyhead in Wales is the closest British port to Dublin. Lorries arriving from Ireland often drive across England to get to France, rather than taking the longer sea route. But a new sea route, direct from Dublin to the continent, is being considered in case Brexit makes it harder to send goods via the UK. This would cut out Holyhead, threatening hundreds of jobs. Truck driver Michael Hartnett says the uncertainty is worrying.
We have no information. We don't know when we go to Dover what's going to happen. We don't know when we go to France and we're coming back into the United Kingdom what's going to happen. We don't know, actually, even being here and collecting our trailers from the port, we have no idea what the procedure is going to be.
There are similar concerns in Dover, the busiest port on the English Channel. A report by the local council found that if new customs checks add just a few minutes for each truck, tailbacks of thousands of lorries could stretch for miles. But where there is disruption, there could be opportunity. At Immingham, near Hull in northern England, there's hope that Brexit might make the port more competitive.
Well, we are very optimistic about the future. If there are delays and extra delays for the customs arrangement, which will cause a particular problem for ports in the southeast like Dover, where they've got very constrained land space, that will lead to additional queues for their traffic. We have land space available here that we can manage the space better so we don't have that queuing issue.
Residents and businesses in port cities around the UK are hoping for more clarity as the pace of Brexit negotiations picks up. But until an agreement is reached, they can only hope for the best while planning for the worst.
Going now to Papua New Guinea, where APEC preparations are currently taking place. Here's Echo Hortaleza Quinola for the report.
This building behind me is where the Asia Pacific Economic Corporation, or APEC 2018, will be held at. This is the APEC House. The APEC leaders from different countries will come to Papua New Guinea to formulate a multi-year plan. The APEC Summit is the largest event that will be done in Papua New Guinea. The global focus is now on Papua New Guinea as it will host this year's Asia Pacific Economic Corporation, or the so-called APEC, on November 15 to 17, 2018 under the theme Inclusion in the Age of Disruption, Charting a Common Future. The APEC leaders, global CEOs, and thought leaders will come to Port Moresby, the capital city of Papua New Guinea. Preparations are well underway to welcome the presidents and prime ministers. As of now, some of the advanced party delegates are already here to have the chance to see what this country have in store that can be showcased in the world. This country will experience an influx of foreign investments and will be a strong source of employment opportunities, not just for the nationals of PNG, but for us too, the Filipinos. Reporting from Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea, this is Echo Hortaleza Quinola, and I am one with 25.
World Travel Expo, including cruise, is the perfect way to kick off your traveling planning for your next adventure. Reginette Moreno reports from Perth.
Traveling is one of the most popular hobbies of people nowadays, especially for the youth who aspires to see the world. Traveling can cost a fortune, especially if one decides to travel overseas to multiple countries for a long period of time. That is why travel expos are done to offer people the right deals and discounts for their next getaway.
A World Travel Expo was done in Perth Convention and Exhibition Centre on the 14th of October to help and offer people the best ways to maximize their travel for their next adventure. The World Travel Expo was a one-day event to help travelers get the hottest offers, whether they want to travel by air, sea, land, or rail. The expo also offers the best hotels and attractions from around the world. A free informative travel presentation was done to display the tourist attractions in different parts of the world, from cruising down Europe's mighty rivers to basking in the California sun. The World Travel Expo promised the travelers the best way to maximize their budget, as they offered holiday packages and cruise deals to those who want to save a little bit on their travel but at the same time, experience a new place like never before.
During travels, people not only see a new place, but they discover different cultures, different people, and new cuisines. The people in the city of Perth are very happy because the World Travel Expo served as a link between international and national travel authorities to help people make the most out of the next travel destination. Reporting for Eagle News International here in Perth, Western Australia, I am Reginette Moreno and I am 1 with 25.
And the news continues here on Eagle News International.
Stay tuned.
Health is our most important asset, and it should always be a constant effort to seek ways to take care of it. That includes professional medical help from the
provide na appropriate ratings sa lahat ng TV shows. Para ugaliin ng pamilya ang responsableng panonood. Teamwork tayo, parents!
Rated G, good for all. Oops, rated PG. Dapat may mga magulang para sagutin ang mga tanong ng kabataan.
Grabe, rated SPG, maselan!
Higpitan ang paggabay.
Pag rated MTRCB, rated responsable.
The Secretary General is currently in Bali, Indonesia, where he addressed leaders of Southeast states on Thursday. Mr. Guterres called on the region's governments to take a lead in the fight against global warming and the damaging effects of climate change. Referring to Monday's special report from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which laid out the devastating consequences of a world that fails to keep global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, Mr. Guterres told the leaders that the climate crisis calls for urgent, ambitious action. Here's more.
This week's IPCC report makes clear that climate change is running faster than we are, and that we are running out of time. It is not too late. We can limit temperatures rise to 1.5 degrees. We have many of the technologies we need, and every effort counts. Bending the emissions curve by 2010 and limiting temperature rise by even half degree can make a world of difference. But that will require urgent and far more ambitious action.
The best and fairest way to cap global warming is to empower indigenous forest peoples, reduce food waste, and slash meat consumption, an alliance of 38 NGOs said. restoring natural forest ecosystems, securing the land rights of local communities, and revamping the global food system could cut greenhouse emissions 40% by mid-century and help humanity avoid climate catastrophe, they argued in a 50-page report based on recent science. Approximately half of the reduced emissions would come from boosting the capacity of forests and wetlands to absorb CO2, and the other half from curtailing carbon-intensive forms of agriculture. On current trends, Earth is on track to warm up an unlivable 3 or 4 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, far above the 1.5 degrees Celsius climate safe threshold endorsed last week by the UN in a major climate change assessment. In the wake of the UN report, two starkly different visions are emerging on how to beat back the existential threat of global warming. One calls for geoengineering and the aggressive use of technology to draw excess carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, especially by burning biofuels and capturing the emitted CO2, a process known by its acronym BECCS or BECCS. The other favored in the new Missing Pathways to 1.5 degrees Celsius report is based primarily on Earth's natural capacity to absorb CO2. But how to do that remains a challenge. More than 2 decades of UN-led efforts to curb deforestation have largely failed, with the planet still losing a wooded area the size of Greece every year.
The number of climate-related disasters around the world is growing rapidly. Humanitarians warn, urging more efforts to prepare and build resilience to looming changes on a warming planet.
That in the 70s, we used to be dealing with 80 to 100 severe weather-related shocks and hazards. In 2017, we dealt with about 400, and that is about 4 times more.
Friday's conference was aimed at unpacking the humanitarian implications of the findings in a landmark UN climate report this week, which warned drastic action was needed to prevent Earth from hurtling towards an unbearable rise in temperature. The Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change said the globe's surface has already warmed 1 degree Celsius, enough to lift oceans and unleash a crescendo of deadly storms, floods, and droughts, and is on track towards an unbelievable 3 degrees or 4 degrees rise. Gernot Laganda, who heads the World Food Programme's Climate and Disaster Risk Reduction Division, pointed out that climate shocks are already significant drivers of displacement, forcing 22.5 million people to leave their homes each year. Speaking to journalists in Geneva, he also decried the increasingly destructive interplay between conflict and climate disasters. He pointed out that the world's 10 most conflict-affected countries, including Syria, Yemen, and the Democratic Republic of Congo, are also impacted by extreme weather events, creating a so-called pressure cooker effect.
We do not only need more humanitarian aid, we also need to deal with the consequences of more frequent and intense weather extremes in a more forward-looking way, moving from crisis response to risk management. We are projecting that with a 2-degree warmer world, we will have around 189 million people in a status of food insecurity, more than today. And if it is a 4 degrees warmer world, which is possible if no action is taken, we are looking beyond 1 billion more. So there is a very, very strong argument for early and decisive climate action. Now,
we'll be back with more news right after this break.
Stay with us. And finally, in our news, Sony's superhero film Venom held on to the lead this weekend in the North American box offices, again followed by last weekend's number 2, A Star is Born. Industry tracker Exhibitor Relations reported Sunday. Now, Venom took in an estimated $35.7 million for the 3-day weekend, dropping from last weekend's $80 million, while Warner Brothers' well-reviewed Star had $28 million in ticket sales, down from $41.2 million. Universal's highly touted astronaut drama First Man from Oscar-winning director Damien Chazelle took in just $16.5 million in its opening weekend to place third. First Man opened with high expectations, reuniting Chazelle with Ryan Gosling, his star from popular musical La La Land. Because of its adult skewing audience, analysts predict a long run for the film, which recounts Neil Armstrong's journey to the moon in 1969. Meanwhile, A Star is Born, the third remake of a 1937 film by the same name, marks the directing debut of actor Bradley Cooper, who plays a country rock musician who falls in love with a young singer played by pop superstar Lady Gaga, only to see her star rise as his tumbles. Now, Venom stars Tom Hardy as a journalist who becomes the super powerful host for an alien symbiote. His character is a villain in the Spider-Man world. Panned by critics, the film, which also stars Michelle Williams, nevertheless has had strong global ticket sales.
We cannot just...
Don't forget to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Tumblr. Also check out our boards in Pinterest and pictures on Instagram. I'm Sam Cepeda. Thanks for joining us.
And that's it for tonight's broadcast. I'm Alma Angeles, and
we're one with 25.